Welcome to Wayfinders and welcome to today's webinar on identity theft and fraud. I'm your host, Randall Adcock, and I'm thrilled to introduce our expert speaker for today, Lloyd Kenney. Imagine these scenarios. You probably have your life savings in a bank account somewhere. Your bank cards are in your wallet or purse, along with your health care card, birth certificate, passport, social insurance card, and maybe your cell phone has your bank's web link with an automated password. You likely received phone calls in the past asking for a donation or a disaster relief, offering to remotely fix your computer, or challenging you on your income taxes. The dark web is a frightful scenario, with tens of thousands of criminals trading in stolen identities, goods, and information. Today, we're privileged to have Lloyd Kenney, a member of Wayfinders, who makes a compelling case for taking action to protect yourself from identity theft and fraud. Lloyd has years of experience researching identity theft and fraud, collecting personal stories, and delivering seminars just like this one. You'll be covering a range of topics from safeguarding credit cards, criminal records, health records, to security on the Internet of Things at home, protecting your computer, and even discussing synthetic identities, malvertising, real estate title theft, and more. So if you're ready to learn about some of the emerging frauds and gain valuable insights on how to protect yourself, then you're in the right place. Let's give a warm welcome to Lloyd Kenney.
All right, we'll get started now. Hello, my name is Lloyd Kenney, and welcome to our session on identity theft, frauds, and scams. It's probably in order that I provide a little bit of background. I retired in 1998 after 35 years in sales, marketing, and operations. Began helping some small businesses with performance management, and in 2003 was introduced to prepaid legal services, which then added ID Shield in 2005. In 2006, we had a gentleman come to us, a prepaid legal services expert in identity theft, their leading associate. He was a lawyer, presented a couple of seminars in Edmonton, and when he left, he challenged some of us to go out and do public seminars to raise the awareness of identity theft. He just thought that there were far too many people being victimized that didn't need to be if they knew more about it. So that's what got started doing these sessions. Started in late March of 2006, and since then have presented more than 240 sessions. And we just want to make sure that you're best prepared when you run into things that are questionable and try and prevent you from being victimized. I think there's a huge difference in the slides that I use now compared to what we were doing in 2006. The criminals keep coming up with new ways to victimize us, which is what you might expect. The information I'm going to share with you comes from several places. I've attended courses sessions put on by the Edmonton Police Service, the RCMP, of course, newspapers and magazines and TV news items, plus the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. And if you're not familiar with the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, I would encourage you to check their website. I don't consider myself an expert on identity theft. I believe that title belongs to police officers who specialize in it, security and digital security people who specialize in it as well. And of course, thousands of criminals around the world who definitely specialize in it. So I don't want to scare anyone. I have to tell you that especially when I'm presenting this to seniors, I have people tell me that I succeeded in scaring them. That's not the intent. And I use a phrase that I got from my mother about 70 years ago. She said, being forewarned is forearmed. So that's the way I would like you to view the information today. I'm going to provide examples of a number of these frauds, scams, and actual identity theft activities by criminals. But I'm going to start with a story that I found when I was doing some research before I did the very first one. And this is from CTV News, and it was 2005, so even before I started doing them. But this was a fellow in Edmonton who lost his or had his briefcase stolen. And the Edmonton Police Service detective who was working on the case became acquainted with a gentleman in California named Dan Clements. He was known as the card cop. He spent his time monitoring what the criminals were doing online in 2005. And he said then that at any given time, there were approximately 300 chat rooms on the dark web on which 60,000 criminals, and I'm reading right from the story, 60,000 criminals were buying and selling personal information. That was in 2005. Do you suppose there's any less of that going on now with modern technology? My guess is there's a whole lot more. Sometimes we remember things if there's a little bit of humor attached to it. So I'm going to give you a little story, and it underscores the idea that we should never give any more information away than is absolutely necessary. So this story is about a fellow who is in court. He's charged with robbery, and it's a full court session with judge and jury. At the end, the jury goes out, doesn't deliberate very long, and they come back and announce he's not guilty. At which point he jumps up and says, "Hey, judge, that's fantastic. Does that mean I get to keep the money?" A little too much information, we might think. Okay, so let's get started with the actual information we can share with you. I believe that identity theft, fraud, and scams have one big problem, and it's covered in these two little items: apathy and ignorance of the magnitude of the risks. People just don't realize how big the problem is, and their conviction that it will always happen to someone else. And unfortunately, sooner or later, the someone else may be us. So what is identity theft? It's a crime that occurs when someone obtains your personal information and uses it fraudulently. The Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre suggests that this is actually two crimes. There's one crime when they steal our information, and then another crime when they use it fraudulently. But we have to keep that in mind. The crooks are very busy. It is a multi-billion-dollar criminal industry. There's little risk for the potential reward. Less than 5% of identity thieves are caught, and conditional sentences are common. So we have to realize that identity thieves are no different than any other thief. They're looking at crime and they're asking themselves two questions. Number one, can I make money at it? Absolutely, you can. When I began doing these seminars in 2006, I was told that you could buy a forged Alberta driver's license on the downtown streets of Edmonton for $25. They also said that those little credit card slips that we used to have when there was an imprinter on the desk, they ran our card over this little slip, that those slips after use were worth $25. And that's in 2005. Just imagine. Less than 5% of identity thieves caught. And we're going to come back to this later, but this is a number that the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre has been using for some time. They say that the numbers that they produce represent less than 5% of the actual crimes that are happening. And you'll see why that is when we get to it. Conditional sentences are common. And unfortunately, judges still aren't very heavy on identity thieves. So it's not much more than a slap on the wrist quite often. I'll just have you focus on the column on the right side, this one, and just the Alberta line. So in Alberta, investment losses last year, and I just got this information from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre a couple of weeks ago. Alberta went from 23.5 million to 36.4 million. That's investment losses that have been reported. So just imagine how much it really is. Spear phishing, Alberta, this is from their report, 4 million went up to 8.5 million. And romance fraud, fortunately, went the other way. It went from 6.2 million roughly to 3.5 million. But this is their statement. It is estimated that the total number of complaints, victims, and dollar loss presented in this report represents less than 5% of the total number of actual victims. So that's the background for why we're doing what we're doing. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because unless you're a business owner, it may not be all that meaningful. But you should be aware that there are two pieces of privacy legislation. The first covers Alberta. The second covers both Alberta and federal. And so when I started doing this, I contacted the privacy commissioner. I said, okay, which industries are covered under federal law so we can eliminate that? Well, I'll read them for you. Telecommunications, railways, provincial transportation, airports, magazines, the military, and my guess, most of you watching this video won't have any connection with those six. But number 7 is banks. The big banks all operate under federal legislation. I found it interesting that until 2018, if a hacker got into one of the big banks, they were not obligated to report it to you or I as clients. But that changed in 2018, so now they must tell us. So that means that other than those 7, every other business in Alberta must be abiding by PIPA. And the government a few years ago produced a one-page document called PIPA on a Page. And these are the terms of this legislation, and I'm just going to condense them. But even if you're a retired person and not involved with a business at all, you can keep in mind that these are the terms that any place that you're doing business or have some of your personal information involved, they must be abiding by these rules. They must obtain consent for collecting, using, and disclosing personal information, collect personal information only for reasonable purposes and only as much as is reasonable for those purposes, use and disclose personal information only for the purposes for which it was collected. On request, provide an individual with information about the existence, use, and disclosure of your personal information. Ensure that any personal information is as accurate as necessary for the collection purposes, is secure, and keep only as long as reasonable. That's a good one to remember. Some of you probably recall Winners on HomeSense had a hacking a few years ago. When you looked at the terms of PIPA, 2 items here stick out. It says that it must be secure. Well, obviously it wasn't secure or they wouldn't have been hacked. And they must be kept only as long as reasonable. So if you're a business and you're keeping clients and customers' personal information, you should only have it as long as you need it. After that, make sure you delete it. The last 2 are really important. Notify the Information and Privacy Commissioner of an incident involving the loss of or unauthorized access to personal information, and designate an individual to make sure you comply with the Act. So some of you may be small business owners, and just like me, that probably means that you are the designated individual. So you have to be sure that you're complying with the PIPA terms. What I usually suggest when I'm doing this at a live seminar, and I might as well use it here, if you suffer from insomnia at all, and PIPA on a Page doesn't seem complete, I would encourage you to read the official government legislation on the Personal Information Protection Act of Alberta. I believe that after about 10 minutes, you'll be sound asleep because, of course, it's written in lots of legalese. Just to show you how big some of these criminal organizations are, this is one that sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. International drug trade is now less lucrative than the trade in personal information, and that was in 2008. So just imagine what the situation is now, but we still hear more about drugs than we do about the personal information. This was that organization that was in Surrey, BC. They had fake ID and credit cards. They had Canada Post uniforms, mailbox keys, 2,400 pieces of mail, roughly 20,000 personal profiles on each of 10 CDs. So that's 2 million potential victims. One criminal organization. Talk about magnitude of a problem, eh? Just draw your attention that little device that a person is holding, that's a card reader. So now you see when we suggest don't let your credit card out of your sight, the very first seminar I attended with the Edmonton Police Service, one of the detectives doing the presentation asked a lady in the front row if he could borrow her credit card for a minute. Well, sure. It's a police officer, so she gave him the credit card, and he kept talking about the security process, and finally he gave her card back. And a few minutes later, he said, "Oh, by the way, I just scanned the number off your credit card." And of course, everybody is astounded. He had a device that was about half the size of this one, and he had slid the card through it in his hand while he was talking. So that's a card reader. The one on the right is one that you can buy when you're walking down the sidewalk and you pass somebody. You're close enough that you can scan their credit card while it is in their wallet or purse, unless they're using an aluminum wallet or a metal lined purse to protect it. Those are just some of the devices that the crooks are using. We have a few misconceptions. One is that credit card is not the only problem. In fact, if you ask the average person on the street what's the biggest involvement in identity theft, most will tell you that it's a credit card problem or bank card. The last report I found said somewhere between 25 and 28% is probably credit card, bank card related. So where's the rest? Well, here they are. The 5 most common: driver's license, social insurance, medical, character. That's where someone uses your personal information and carries your ID. They're arrested for any other crime, but you're the one that's left with the criminal record. And we have an example of that to share with you. Financial identity theft, and that's the credit card and bank card. I read an article some time ago in Family Circle magazine, and they said that in some areas, 60% of all identity theft is related to medical. Seems surprising, but we'll give you some examples. Criminals get duplicate prescriptions with stolen ID. Please ensure that any pill bottles have those labels removed before you discard them. I remember one seminar I did, and an elderly lady said, "I have a system." She said, "I put all of my old bottles in a closable plastic bag. When the bag is full, I pour in a cup of water and seal it." She said a few days later, all of those labels are just mush, and you could just wipe them off the bottles. So it's a good idea. Organized crime rings set up fake clinics, use stolen medical ID to file false insurance claims. Over 6 to 12 months, they can make $1 to $2 million. That makes credit card fraud look like small change, but it's very real. A criminal could walk out of a hospital with 1 million digital files on a digital device, and here's the catch: nothing would be missing. They simply copied it. In September 2013, a laptop was stolen from an Edmonton Medicenter. 620,000 Albertans were put at risk. 2 laptops containing private information on 250,000 people were stolen from a U of A hospital research lab. Everyone probably knows where Didsbury is, southwest of Edmonton. They had a doctor's office, a clinic with several doctors, but one of the doctors became ill, and they decided to close the clinic. And when they closed it, they donated some of the equipment to the town of Didsbury. Well, a couple of years later, the town decided they should go and have a look at this equipment that they inherited. And when they went in, they found 111 boxes. I'm reading right from the Calgary Herald report. 111 boxes with 3,000 patient files. How many were there when the doctors left? How many were taken and copied and put back? It's just the kind of things that is scary. And I'm reading also from the bottom, it says, Frank Work, who was the Alberta Privacy Commissioner at the time, said the problem of abandoned files is more common than many patients realize. The Privacy Commissioner, for example, had a case where the daughter of a physician was storing his patient records in her garage. So this is real things that are happening, and it might seem scary. I have another story of an Alberta doctor accidentally leaking the medical records of 7,000 patients. It's just, you can see how medical files are so important to the crooks. Major event identity theft. And there's so many of these that are possible. Identity theft, fraud, scams based on any fire, flood, hurricane, pandemic, using fear to solicit donations. I'm going to share some of what popped up that I recognized on COVID. But you might remember the Fiona hurricane in the Maritime provinces is one big one, and the Notre Dame Cathedral burning in Paris. Those two spawned hundreds of criminal activities saying this was a disaster. Please donate to rebuild the cathedral. Please donate to help the victims. And all the money was going to the crooks. But they made those facilities looking very realistic, and people donated. So here are ones that I found directly related to COVID, but were all frauds. Offers of new treatments and cures, help for students getting government aid, impersonating religious leaders. That happened right here. That's solicitation. Posing as the Red Cross, you got free masks for a donation. Well, you made the donation, but you never saw any masks. Impersonating health officials, claims of CBD oil as treatment, fake COVID test advisory, fake government websites, special access to vaccinations. They were offering, the crooks were offering vaccinations. You could get it early, but there was a $25 bill attached. With virtually all of these, any help that you got or products or services they were offering, there was always dollars attached. And of course, in order to do that, they also got your information. Be wary of cell phone apps. They may contain malware. There were 500 million flashlight apps downloaded. All had spyware, and they were sending the information that they collected off the smartphone to China, Russia, and India. I have a handout that some of you could have available if you wish. At the end of the session, you'll have my contact information, and I can email it to you. But there is a YouTube video that you can watch explaining how that was happening. And don't think it's limited to flashlight apps, because most phones now have flashlights. You don't have to download an app, but anything that you download, and we'll talk that a bit more in a minute. You may see a full screen warning of a virus on your device with instructions on how to remove it for a payment, of course. And some of you, another one that we're going to mention later, but you've probably had a phone call from someone posing as Microsoft or Windows, and they're going to fix something that's wrong with your computer. Same idea. I have over 20 different emails that I've received that were all frauds and scams. I'm just going to show you a few different ones so you know what to watch for. But here's one I received from TD Canada. It even says on the link, it's Canada Trust at the end. But if you look at the brackets where this email is coming from, it's obchod@melcher.cz. That's the Czech Republic. What are the chances that I'm getting an email or having a parcel sent from the TD Canada in the Czech Republic? There's another reason that isn't obvious here. But in more than 80 years, I have never had an account at the Toronto Dominion Bank. But I received the email. If I received it, I am quite sure there are dozens and dozens of actual TD clients who also received it. And they might have thought it was legitimate and clicked on it. Here's one from Canada Post, and I'm sorry that this isn't big enough that you can read it, but up in the top left corner, it says it's from canadapost.ca, and then in brackets, service@canadapost.ca, and that logo is 100% accurate. I wasn't expecting a parcel, so I phoned Canada Post at the time. I phoned them again recently, to confirm this, they don't send out emails like this, period. They want you to contact the local post office if you have a question about something, or they use the chat system, but they don't normally send out emails. But just be worried about things like this. FedEx, I've had two from FedEx. This looks like it's official. You even have the fellow's name, Sean Quinn. But if you look where that's coming from in the brackets, SRI-ICEF at libero.it. FedEx sending me a parcel from India, highly unlikely. So be careful. Always look at these areas in the screen, or pardon me, between the brackets, just to show where it's coming from. And here's one with a little story that I thought was very creative on the part. By the way, I had a police officer once tell me that the ways that criminals can get our information and then use it fraudulently is limited only by the creativity of the thief. And I'll show you how creative this group is. We had purchased a new microwave oven in June. In November, it was having some problems, and there was a message on the screen that said, don't use the microwave anymore. So we took it back to Costco, and they gave us a full credit. We got a new one, came home. 2 days later, this email arrived. And it says that this is a short 30-second video about your experiences with Costco Wholesale. The timing was perfect. But look where that's coming from between the brackets up there. ZOJ at quarterback with 2ks.co.uk. Total scam. If you had clicked on that and done that little survey, I'm pretty sure they would have gotten some information they didn't need. Another misconception: if I'm not responsible for fraudulent charges made to my credit cards or bank accounts, well, the annual cost in Canada, and I just checked this a couple of months ago, last year was 800 million, approximately. We may not be responsible individually, but we are collectively. The question is simple: where do the banks and the credit card companies recover that 800 million? And I'm sure you're thinking, well, they probably get it from us anyhow. It's the service fees and the interest rates, all those good things. And so I did a little bit more research, and I found that 6 big banks had a net profit of over $41 billion. So I did the math, and 800 million, now you're less than 2% of their profits. And when I first found this number, and it wasn't 800, it was 500 million about 6 or 7 years ago, and I phoned the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center and asked them, aren't the big banks worried about this $500 million being lost? He said, I've talked to 2 of the big banks, and they said that their customers and clients want speed and efficiency. So for us, it's a cost of doing business. So you and I are stuck with paying the bill because they're not going to collect the money anywhere else. If I am careful with personal information and mail, then I am safe. Our personal information is in many places over which we have no control. Professional offices, hotels, registry offices, insurance brokerages. Just think of the information that those organizations, business types would have. And this is an actual example: a woman who worked at a West Edmonton registry office, private information to her boyfriend who had connections to terrorism. 50 vehicles stolen in the Kelowna area were registered using stolen registrations from the Edmonton registry. So just think, if the police came to your door and said, you know, we've got some vehicles in Kelowna that were stolen, and they were re-registered using your information, my guess is you would have just as many questions as the police do. But that's what can happen. And I did have some information way back about 15 years ago. The Ontario registry people actually had hired, not intentionally, of course, a fellow who was a criminal. And by the time they realized that he had stolen the information from 5,800 clients. But Car registration, simple. Fraud from identity theft, access to vehicles. Here are some risks. Don't use your remote to lock vehicles in an urban area. That is a radio signal which someone can pick up. They could be parked just a lane away, pick up the signal when you click your button as soon as you're out of sight, and it happened in South Edmonton Common, so this is real. Keep your key fob in a metal container, and you'll notice those aluminum wallets at the bottom. If we were in a live session, I'd offer to sell you one of those for $5 or $6, but that won't happen today. But use an aluminum wallet, or I know that some stores, Canadian Tire, sell some of these. Also, the AMA, Alberta Motor Association, have wallet type folders that are lined with aluminum or a metal of some type that provide that security. And the criminals have signal amplifiers now. So you can park your vehicle on your driveway or in a parking lot that's close to the door, and they can come to your vehicle, stand beside it, and amplify the signal from your key fob in the house, in your wallet or purse, up to 300 feet approximately. And if you have a push button start on your vehicle, they can literally drive it away because your vehicle thinks the key is there. So just keep your key fobs secure inside, especially if you're in a high traffic area. We suggest some type of an aluminum container hanging on the wall, just like the wallet. I read 2 articles on the subject, and one said you should keep your key fob in the microwave or the freezer because it's all aluminum, it's all metal. I'm not too sure how practical that idea is. And a new threat, and this is 6 years old, but it's even more important today. Car hacking remains a very real threat as autos become ever more loaded with technology. Researchers have remotely applied the brakes to a Tesla Model X. They opened and closed the doors in the trunk. They flashed the lights in time with the audio beat on the radio. Just imagine, all done remotely. So our advice, subscribe to over-the-air security updates. If you have a relatively new vehicle, check with your dealer. There are probably updates coming through for the computer on your system. Some people say, well, I'll do that every time I go in to have it serviced. And what the recommendation is that don't wait for that. If they have a subscription service that they can sell you, you're probably better to do it. So it's more like your computer that's updated on a regular basis automatically. Internet fraud, and here's some quick ones. Duplicated websites, be careful of those. Pop-up windows and links, don't click on them. Credit cards on file, don't give an organization your credit card number and just tell them to keep it on file for the next purchase. Don't do that. Unsecure passwords. I've read 2 or 3 articles where they said that the most common password in the world is password. Not exactly secure. And using the search line instead of the address line. And so I thought I would do a little test on this because a young lady, when I was doing one seminar, said she never uses anything but the search line. So I phoned the Royal Bank. I got their address and I put it right on the search line. And I got what you see here, and I got 5 pages that look much like this. I don't know how many more pages there were, but you see how many. Can you guarantee that any of those are the right one that you want to click on, or some of them could be fraudulent? So I went back and I put that same address right up here in the address line. That's where it's supposed to be. Then you click on it, and there is the only option you have. It's the right one. But please, if you're wanting information about Parkinson's disease, put it on the search line. You can read happily for 2 or 3 days, but don't risk things by going to a website on the search line. This story is about a young lady who was going to university in Calgary. She went home to Vancouver to visit her parents. The reason I know about this is her grandfather was a volunteer with me at a seniors facility in St. Albert, and he was telling me about this several years ago. The thief that stole her purse sold parts of her identification to different criminals. One criminal committed crimes in the US, and this student was told that if she tries to enter the US, she will probably be arrested. She was unable to get a job for more than a year due to her criminal record. One criminal got a student loan in her name. So she was then unable to get her next loan. She attempted to change her name, but unable to do so because of her criminal record. How's that for being between a rock and a hard place? She talked to a police officer in Calgary who was familiar with her file, and she told me that he said that he thought that there were now 200 to 300 people around the world now using parts of her identity. Now, not that long ago, I talked to her grandfather again, and he said, and this happened several years ago, she's still running into problems that resulted from this stolen purse. But she did get married. Anyone think just for a minute how she might have been able to do that? She got married. There's always a way to beat it. Okay, just be very careful with stolen wallets and purses. Here's the one that scares most businesses and larger organizations. Most business photocopiers and even some home models made since 2002 have hard drives, capture and store the image of every document scanned. Have the hard drive cleaned when selling or trading your machine. Check with the manufacturer. I'll have another little story here, but the best way to find out if you have a hard drive in it is to ask the manufacturer. And if you do have a hard drive and it's an old one that you're just going to take for recycling, take the hard drive out and drill some holes through it so it can't be used. If it's a larger unit, or if you've got it leased, the lease terms probably say that it has to be in operating condition when the lease is up. In that case, you can't drill holes through the hard drive. So I suggest that you call ProPC. It's a tech firm here in Edmonton who has a military grade software that will overwrite what's on the hard drive. But the story is that you can go to youtube.com and search digital photocopiers loaded with secrets. And believe it or not, but this is over 10 years old now, but I called a person in Edmonton who sells office machines, and he said, your information is still accurate. When people are buying or leasing these machines, most manufacturers now have an option that you can buy with the machine that will allow you to delete the information that's on the hard drive when you're finished with it. But there's usually a substantial charge for that addition, $500 or more, and most businesses decide not to take the option. Well, that video that is mentioned there is CBS News bought some used machines from a large used photocopier supply warehouse. At that warehouse, there were 2 containers already loaded with used photocopiers. Those containers were going to Argentina and Singapore. And you and I wonder how people around the world can get some of our personal information. They took one of those units, the first one, to the studio, took the shrink wrap off, lifted the lid on the tray, and there's a document from the previous owner still on the tray. It was from the City of Buffalo, New York Police Department Sex Abuse Division. What do you suppose is on the hard drive? Don't quote me on the number, but I believe it was 50-some thousand documents that they were able to take off the hard drive when they took it out. So keep that in mind when you're getting rid of an old photocopier. And you can always ask, often when we're doing business, we might say, could you make a copy of that for me? And they say, sure. The next question would be, what do you do with the information off my document that is now on your machine? It'd be interesting. Charging stations, primary mobile device, public charging station risks. People forget that the power and the data use the same cable. Hackers may have access to the station. Think of a janitor working in a mall at night. He has a friend that says, hey, can I come in with you? And he goes to a charging station and installs a device that they have. They could have the ability to hack into anyone that's charging their device. They could copy files and information. They could install malware on the device. So how do you protect yourself? Keep your apps updated, home charge, carry a charger with you or an extra battery. Lock your device, don't use it while it's charging. And some are equipped with pairing, so you can disable that so it can't be operated at the same time. Many of you have probably heard of the Internet of Things. Almost anything in your house now can be controlled from your smartphone. I was surprised the last time our daughter and son-in-law bought a new washing machine, found out they could program that from a smartphone anytime. Well, that means the criminals could too if they hacked into it. This is hacking into routers and cameras which are accessed via the internet, home automation. I talked to a friend of mine who is involved with supplying home automation equipment, and he said that bottom line is the answer. Be sure to keep your security systems updated. How many bad stories have we heard about people who had nasty things happening through their baby monitor, for example, and cameras? From identity theft, another one involving real estate. I have the story here. It's a Toronto lady, older lady, who was wanting to sell her big old Victorian house and buy something smaller. So she went to the bank to get a mortgage to buy the smaller one, and they said, well, you can't have a mortgage. You've already got a $300,000 mortgage on the house you have. She didn't think she owed anything on it. It was free and clear. Well, it turns out someone had used stolen ID and actually changed her title. Title fraud. I was doing a seminar once in St. Albert, and somebody asked, how on earth could anyone steal your title? And a lady who is a mortgage broker actually stood up and answered the question for me. She said, if you've got a crooked lawyer and a crooked mortgage broker, you can steal all the property you want. So it's not difficult. One of the things that we suggest is that when you renew your mortgage, take out the highest line of credit that you can get. The line of credit doesn't cost anything if you don't use the money, but it becomes a poison pill because the bank will then register that line of credit on the title. And the other thing that you can do is once a year, maybe every second year, spend the $20 or $30 and get the registry office to order a new title document just to see if there's anything nefarious going on with it. And a new crime that I just found out last year, scammers are now hacking into the email account of mortgage brokers and lawyers. And just before the close of the sale of a piece of property, they send an email to the buyer saying, please send the down payment to this new address. Just to complicate things. And the story that I read indicated that most of these, the money then has gone overseas and the chance of recovering it is almost nil. Synthetic identity theft. And I believe it was 2018 that the Federal Trade Commission in the US said this was now the most common activity of identity thieves. Criminals purchase some of your personal information on the dark web. They combine it with some of theirs or another victim's to make a whole new synthetic identity, but it is all made with real information. And I can only imagine how frustrating this must be for police officers if they're trying to track down something that's like this. Another reason for having your identity being monitored at all times. Another one that is fairly new, malvertising. It's online advertisements that incorporate or install malware, a website or link that appears to be legitimate from Amazon, Wayfair, Walmart, or other marketer. When clicking on it, malware is automatically downloaded to your device. The example in the story that I was reading about it was walmartdeals.com. Sounds pretty legitimate, but that was a fraud. So be very careful clicking on anything like that or looking at that website. Malicious QR codes, tracking your online activities on websites by using cookies. They're collecting data associated to you, type of device, IP address, location, information entered, exposing financial data via your credit card. So this is not a very long article, but I strongly recommend. I'm not techie enough to provide you with all of the details, but that website at the bottom, www.cyber.gc.ca, is an excellent article that you should read just to get all the information on malicious QR codes. PIN pad fraud in Canada. I'm sure most of you have heard of this one, fraudsters swap. The PIN pads, the fraudulent PIN pad captures the magnetic stripe and PIN information as entered by the cardholder. Heat-sensitive cameras on cell phones can photograph the PIN pad to identify the PIN and match it to the card just scanned. So if you're in a busy food store checkout line and somebody's coming behind you acting a little bit suspicious, I have a friend who experienced that once when they were in BC. That device in the bottom right-hand corner, the RFID reader, if they're standing behind you in the check line, they've already got that. You press the numbers on the PIN pad and they come along right after you get your receipt and move along, and they take a picture of the PIN pad with a heat-sensitive camera, and now they have all of the information they need. A technician that I spoke to said that what he does is when he's finished with a PIN pad, he holds his hand over the whole pad while the cashier is getting his receipt. So he's warming up all of the buttons so that anybody coming behind won't be able to get that, or take a pen or a pencil and use that to press the buttons instead. Check fraud, and I know some people say, well, nobody's writing checks anymore. They're all using transfers, and that could be true. But I suggest that even if you're writing or signing documents, use one of these pens, a Zebra Z Grip Max Gel or a Uniball 207. They aren't much more expensive than any other ballpoint pen, but they have a gel ink that penetrates the fibers of the paper that your check is made from. So if anyone tries to erase what's on it already, they will destroy the check. They won't be able to just swap it. And I got this information from the National Fraud Center. They're in Charleston, South Carolina. I spoke to the fellow who's my age. He started this many years ago, a Vietnam War veteran, in fact. Fraud from imposters. Posing as Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, Wayfair, Walmart. There are just so many options that the criminals have here, but they may be selling you Prime membership for Amazon, for example. There may be membership fees that you haven't paid. There could be issues with your account, numbers on your account. Yeah. You may have been hacked and they're trying to fix the problem for you, but all of your account to get some payment for things they didn't know about. All these kinds of issues. The solution, provide no information, period. Call suppliers yourself, verify the issue. Investment scams, same type of things. And remember, that's the biggest losses in Alberta. Ponzi, pyramid, joint venture, friend recommend financing. Solutions, get the proposal in writing. Consult with a certified financial planner, investment advisor. Do research on the first business or individual. Consult with a lawyer on any contracts. Simple, we hope. The scheme, artificial intelligence. Your voice can be cloned after hearing it for less than 20 seconds. You receive a call from someone you know who needs information or money. The voice is real. That was on the evening news just 3 days ago in Edmonton. Lady got the phone call from her son, but when the son said that he was being arrested for impaired driving and they put a police officer on the phone, she thought the police officer didn't sound legitimate. So she hung up, contacted her son. He didn't have anything to do with it. It's all artificial intelligence. So the solution, tell them you will call them back very soon. If they want information or money, tell them you'll call back very soon, but call to a number you know, not one they give you, because they're smart enough to know. You say, okay, I'll call you back real soon. And they'll say, oh, I'm sorry, I just changed my number. Here's my new number. That's the way they would deceive you. And another one from artificial intelligence, the scheme AI makes use of multiple photographs of an individual to create a video. The victim's image is used on another body to make videos. The female image is often used to make pornographic videos. The solution, don't post multiple photographs. Don't put photographs frequently on social media or anywhere else with public access. The example that I saw was Tom Cruise, who was a very popular movie star, and they created a comedy sketch where he was a stand-up comedian, and it was all phony. He had nothing to do with it, but they were able to make it look like he was now in the comedy business. Okay, some very quick ones, various frauds and scams. Grandma scam, I'm sure everyone has heard about that. It's happened all over. I was doing a little seminar in Manville, rural area. One grandmother had received a call that her grandson was in Montreal and had a $5,000 problem, and she, except that her daughter kind of became suspicious of some things. Border Services calls, you're getting a call that says there's a parcel coming to you, but the Border Services people have intercepted it because they think it's illicit drugs that's in the parcel. RTMP scam, a young lady at one of my seminars told me that she was working on a computer one day and all of a sudden the screen froze and it looked like the RCMP website on the screen. And it said that they had identified that the computer had child pornography on it. If she could provide the information to this website, they would clean it up for her for this much money. She was smart enough to shut her computer off, phone the RCMP, verify it was a scam. Bank inspector scam. This happened in St. Albert. A lady got a call from someone who posed as her bank's privacy and security department. They thought that there was a teller that was a criminal. And so would she go to the bank, withdraw $3,800, and they would meet her at a parking lot and pick up the $3,800, and then they would deposit it through this fraudulent teller. Well, she did exactly that. But when she went to pick up the $3,800, they didn't show up, of course. Phone request for card security number, that 3-digit number on the back of your card. I've been told that this is a very long phone call you're going to get. They're going to tell you they're with your credit card security people. They're going to build rapport till you're feeling real comfortable, and the very last thing they need is your card security number, which probably tells you that they have everything else. That's the only piece of your identity they're missing. Just don't do it. Long-term parking. People are leaving registration, garage door open, GPS systems in their vehicles at an airport, for example. The criminals can break in. They know you're not going to be home for a while. If you leave the GPS, they can actually find their way right to your home. They've got your address on the registration. So just don't leave anything in it that you don't need to leave in it. If you've got GPS that's programmed in there and they're able to access it, don't code in your home address into the GPS system. make it a gas bar or convenience store somewhere close to home. You'll be able to find your way from there, but the criminal won't. And the prepaid credit card fraud, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but when you go to food stores and drug stores, they've got a display of prepaid $50 and $100 credit cards. Well, the criminals now are using those card readers, going into a store and run the reader right down the front display. And they get all of those card numbers. So if you're buying a credit card for someone else or for a friend, you just make sure you tell them when they activate it, use all the money right away. Spend it quick, because you use part of it and go back a few months later to spend the rest and it's not there. Bank information and contacts on cell phones, texting. We have a story of a lady who had programmed her smartphone. She had her hubby's phone number on it so she could dial him quickly. She was shopping one day, had her purse stolen. And so she went home, subsequently called her husband to tell him that she had her purse stolen. He said, well, where were you? She said, I was at such and such a store. He said, uh-oh, I just got a text from you saying that you were at the bank and that you'd forgotten our PIN number. So I texted the PIN number back to you. You all know what happened. Don't put hubby's name or wife's name and phone number on your smartphone. Stolen wallet and purse, and this was a similar story. A lady had her purse stolen at a store. She went home. She got a phone call a little while later. The store was saying that they found her wallet, or pardon me, her purse. When would you like to come and pick it up? So she told them when she was going to be there. She went there. They said, we don't have your purse. So she went back home, and of course, the criminals had broken into her house while she was away. That's how they made sure she wasn't home. Beware of CNP. That means card not present. There are still purchases you can make with just the 16-digit number. And that happened to me twice, about 4 or 5 years ago, twice in 1 year. And what happens is the criminals now are setting up programs on a computer that will simply randomly try to use 16-digit numbers. And once they find a number that works, they use it. So just be aware that that can happen, and hope that the credit card company did just like MasterCard did with me. They phoned and left a message and said there's something fishy here. So just a summary on those big items in Alberta: investment fraud, 245 million; ransom extortion, 52 million; romance fraud. And I've got this one. This happened in 2017, but this one's really interesting. I was doing a seminar in St. Albert, and an RCMP officer sat in on it, and he gave me this information afterwards. There were 5 reports in 11 months in St. Albert, RCMP detachment. Those 5 people lost $1,092,000. I have a simple question, and we can't do it very well on video, but when we're doing live sessions, we ask a simple question: how many of those 5 were seniors? And most people suggest probably all of them. The answer is none. The ages of the victims were 31 to 58. So this romance fraud covers everybody. If you know anyone who is lonely, depressed, have anxiety problems, they could get into a relationship online and fall victim to romance fraud. And there are dozens and dozens of stories out there. Some have lost so much money that we heard of one individual who actually wound up committing suicide when she found out she'd lost around $1 million to what she thought was a legitimate relationship. And the big one, of course, why is everyone so afraid of the tax man? 39 call centers in India were taken down, 700 callers in one of them, targeting US and Canadian citizens. So that's Canada Revenue Agency and the Internal Revenue Service in the US. CRA victims have paid $8,000 to $20,000 in iTunes gift cards. Just think of that. One of those was a lady in Calgary and one was in BC. That 8,000 and 20,000 in gift cards. $2,000 in Bitcoin in Edmonton, and I had coffee with a member of the Edmonton Police Service that told me about that. You didn't pay your taxes, or your husband passed away and he didn't pay his taxes, you owe this much money, here's how you pay it. 2018, one individual in Vancouver was arrested by men in uniform with handcuffs and posing as Canada Revenue Agency personnel. She was escorted to her bank to withdraw money to pay her taxes. Remember when I was talking about how creative some of these folks are? 2014 to 2019, there was 17.2 million, and they've reduced it somewhat now because in 2020, they arrested a couple in Ontario, and they were the money mules that were sending most of this money to India. Don't be a victim of any tax scam. CRA or any other legitimate organization will not request personal information by email, internet link, text. They will not demand payment by gift cards, credit card, or Bitcoin. Call the CRA to verify legitimacy and never send money or access to money. Credit card, bank account information. So here's the database you corrupted. Your insurance claims by you and those who have claimed to be you, your driver's license number and record and the DUI in your name from someone else, your birth certificate that someone else might be using, your social insurance number used by how many people, your address and other addresses you are not aware of, your credit history up to 70% have inaccuracies and credit agencies don't error. Excuse me, 2 items here, actual stories. I think it was about the 3rd or 4th seminar I did. A young lady told me that she had found an error on her credit report, and she called Equifax, and they just told her flat out that no, they were not going to change it. They don't make those kinds of errors. End of story. And another case was I received a phone call from a gentleman in Beaumont who said that he wanted to know if my ID Shield could help him. He said that his son went to get a loan to buy a vehicle, and the credit agency said that he had no credit. So he called. Well, he admitted that he had fouled up his credit rating several years before. He had no credit whatsoever. However, his son had the same first name, middle name, and last name as he did. And the credit agency said same name, same credit rating. They refused to give the son anything. That just shows you what can happen with simple little issues. All right, so we're going to end with some very quick, short snappers here. Understand the scope of the problem. So I think the first thing I should do here is suggest that you give yourself a pat on the back for absorbing as much as you can of the information we've shared today. Purchase online only from reputable marketers. Review your credit report quarterly. Monitor all your accounts monthly. One of the reasons that I suggest you do that is that if there's a fraudulent error on your credit card statement, you probably only have so many weeks to report it in order to get reimbursed. So find out from your credit card company how many days you have to do that. Be careful with garbage. Use separate low-limit credit cards for online purchases. Guard passwords and PINs. Secure your computers. I have a report here. We won't get into it today, but the number of people whose personal information was lost or stolen through stolen laptops is absolutely amazing. So keep those computers secure. Set low limits on daily bank machine withdrawals. If your information is stolen and the crook is able to use your bank machine, the police were telling us of examples where the crook comes in on a Friday night just before midnight and makes the maximum withdrawal. He waits a half an hour, and now it's Saturday morning at 12:30 a.m. He does it again. He does the same Sunday night. So in a couple of hours of his time, he's been able to withdraw the daily limit from 4 days. So minimize the limit that you have. Don't leave mail in the mailbox overnight. Opt out of credit card offers. The police call those credit card offers fraud starter kits. So you receive it in the mail and you're so proud you've been pre-approved for a $10,000 to $20,000 credit card. The crook gets that. They fill it out. They sign your name in their handwriting and submit it, and they get the credit card. But who's stuck with the problems? You or I. Just put those things through a shredder. Carry documents only when necessary. Only carry birth certificate or social insurance card if it's necessary. If you need it where you're going, otherwise leave it at home. There's two reasons for that. First of all, the crooks love to get a birth certificate and a social insurance card. And second, if you lose everything else, but those two items are at home, you can rebuild your own identity. Close unused bank and credit card accounts. The police have got examples where someone at a bank is an accomplice of a criminal and they're using dormant accounts to launder money. In case of a death, notify financial institutions and credit agencies prior to publishing an obituary. That has happened even in Edmonton. The crooks identify through obituaries who passed away, and my guess is that may not happen a whole lot to somebody my age, but for some of you, it could be very real. But they send an invoice to the deceased, dated just a week or two before they passed away. So the executor or the administrator is just trying to clear up the estate, and they pay all the invoices. Well, just make sure that financial institutions and credit agencies know about the situation, and don't allow anything to go through unless you approve it. Refrain from online chain letters. A lot of chain letters have embedded programs where the crooks are just accumulating all those email addresses that you're sending them to. Photocopy contents of your wallet or purse. If lost or stolen, include all documents in the police report. I had a call from a lady in Calgary who had her purse stolen. And she said that she filled out a police report, didn't realize it was a problem, but she forgot to add her library card. The crooks went with her library card to the library, withdrew all of the expensive books and DVDs they could, and they just disappeared. But the library came back to her looking for reimbursement. Shred all discarded documents, cross-cut shredders. There are programs now that can recreate a document from strip cut. Obtain a service that mitigates the risk and provides recovery from identity theft. You will probably find that it will take 600 to 800 hours if you try to do it yourself, and you probably won't be successful in getting it all fixed. If you don't remember anything about what I've been talking about today, or it's just too much detail, here's the one slide to remember. Never provide information, money, or access to money when they contact you by any means: mail, in person, fake websites, phone, text, email, social media, QR code, or pop-up window. Only when you contact them after verifying their legitimacy. One simple rule. So we have our information in places where we have no control, but any place we have any control at all, never provide anything when they contact you. Verify it first. So if your personal information is stolen, you need early detection and reporting. I have to admit that in most cases, the police do not have the resources to follow up on a lot of these smaller crimes. However, I think the process is simple. Police are not having the resources because the politicians aren't giving them the resources. The politicians aren't giving them the resources because they don't know how big the problem is. So unless the police have your report when something goes wrong, and they then have more information to pass on to the politicians, that's the only way that the police are going to have more resources to deal with some of these things. Access to legal counsel. when ID Shield was prepared here 20 years ago, they found that if someone steals all of your identity, you'll probably have legal implications in 70% of the issues. So you probably need access to a private investigator to do some of that work, because there's some red tape that you or I just don't have the ability to get through. So my only suggestion is, before you become a victim, you might want to consider Legal Shield and ID Shield, and then to provide you with some of the information on any of that and anything we've talked about today. Here's my contact information. And we have handouts that we can just email to you if you need to contact me. So with that, we'll just leave that on the screen for a minute or two. And if you wanted to jot down my phone numbers, note, call me any day between 9 a.m. and midnight. Just don't all call the same day, please. And we'll get you whatever information we can. So with that, thank you very much for your attention. We hope we have given you some tools to help you reduce the chance that you're going to be victimized by identity theft, frauds, and scams. Thanks for watching.
Wow, that was incredible, Lloyd. Fantastic. It's quite frightening when you put all the pieces together here. I had no idea that there is so much organized crime and the underground, the dark web, and so on. I mean, a lot of us have picked up this information piecemeal over the years. We change our passwords, we protect our bank cards, but you've put it all together in such a way that has great impact. So we're open now for questions and answers. I'm wondering if our guests, Joanne or Kathy, have any questions. I know I have a couple.
Sure.
Um, I have a question regarding the where you started the story, how people are reluctant to take this seriously. Do you have any further insights as to why people are so reluctant to take the effort to protect themselves against identity theft?
I don't have anything beyond that first slide with those two things. People just don't seem to grasp it. They don't realize how big the problem is, first of all. And second, it's always going to happen to somebody else. I don't have anything better. I wish I did.
Well, I hope that I expect that when people see this video, they will be alarmed at the number of stories, the kinds of different angles that criminals take, and I mean, you provided a lot of tips and advice and what to do if you are actually attacked.
Yeah.
The anecdotes from personal contacts and stories make it so much more real, and as it should be.
Yeah, I've got most of what I talk about. I should say most, but much of it. I've got the full articles here that I clipped out of newspapers and magazines, and I guess the one that I was most surprised at was that very first one, when I was looking at that, and the whole document is about 3 pages, where this fellow Edmonton, that he was a contractor and he had his briefcase stolen out of his truck, and he thought he was going to lose his business because they stole his briefcase. But Al Vonkeman, the detective that was working on it, and that's where I got that information, I was shocked when I saw 2005. That was when ID Shield, identity theft, was really just getting started. But he said, this Dan Clement said, 60,000 criminals around the world. And he said the police take down one of those chat rooms, and he said it just pops up under a different name.
Okay. Um, Joanne, would you have a
Yeah.
question for
Yeah.
Lloyd?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So, when you talk about having good enough security to protect things like baby monitors and things like that in your home, and that is you're talking about protecting your Wi-Fi, right? So like I have a vast premium, I pay for it. In other words, is that good enough? Like what about these free ones that so many people use? Like,
You know, I would be suspicious. But as far as home automation is concerned, when I phoned Jay Shore, you know Jay,
mhm.
and he said the answer is just keeping your system updated. He said people install it and then just forget it.
Yeah, and yeah, and pay for the updates and things too, I think.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so it's the Wi-Fi security. Okay. I have one question. When you're talking about the bank cards and how they can be compromised like that, everywhere has tap now.
Yeah.
Is that, I know that there's a problem if your bank card, got stolen, somebody can go and tap it if you don't notice right away, but is it more secure in the machines than swiping?
I don't think that there's very much difference. And I've had more people complain the other way. I'm not going to use that tap. I don't trust that. I'm going to put in my PIN number.
But then you've got the heat that you were talking about. You
And
don't
that,
have to do anything. Like
oh,
I just pay everything with my phone.
yeah, yeah. I think as long as you've got systems on your devices, and you know that's what ID Shield does. You can protect up to 15 devices if you've got a family program, 3 devices if you're single.
Can you tell us a little bit more about ID Shield? That sounds really good.
Well, the 3 big items are number one, monitoring. So you have 24/7 monitoring on the dark web, the internet, financial, that's Equifax, TransUnion. Any of your personal information that you load on that, they're monitoring it on all of those things, social media, 24/7. And if they find something wrong that's fairly easy to fix, they'll let you know and you can fix it. If it's something major, they'll find out how much information was stolen. And if they decide, you're probably going to need some help with this, we'll appoint a private investigator and he or she will do most of the work. And here's their slogan: we'll do whatever it takes for as long as it takes to restore your identity to the pre-theft status. That's pretty strong. The third thing is the device protection. They don't do this themselves. They combined forces just a couple of years ago with Trend Micro. Trend Micro is a huge organization around the world that deals just with security. And that's who provides the monitoring on all of your devices. They're a huge organization, 150 million clients around the world. And they've joined forces with ID Shield. That's part of the whole package. And for a single person, it's $14.95 a month. For a family, it's $29.95 a month. And for a family, you're getting 15 devices protected. Plus, they have a robust password manager. Plus, you get a virtual private network for all your communications. So your tablet and your smartphone you can use them in public Wi-Fi areas. It's all encrypted. But the list of things, we're not going to go in it now, but there's a 1-page information sheet. But the actual individual things that are covered under ID Shield, it's 2 sheets of paper printed both sides, just a list of what's covered. And 24-hour emergency, you can call them. They have hours that you can call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Regular number during regular hours, and then an emergency number. They have address change monitoring, auto monitoring, continuous credit monitoring, credit freeze and credit alert assistance, credit reports, credit score tracker, credit threat alerts, dark web monitoring. Dedicated identity theft specialist, that's the private investigator, full service restoration, hard credit inquiry alerts, identity consultation services. You can call them an unlimited number of issues. They'll even help you with your security settings on your social media. Live member support, lost or stolen wallet assistance. You can load everything that's in your wallet. And if your wallet is stolen, they know what's being used and what isn't to help you recreate everything. Password manager, personal internet monitoring, privacy management, reputation score, restoration verification, trend micro maximum security, unlimited service guarantee, VPN proxy 1, and wallet lock. That's just, it's pretty complete, but I usually, if anybody that's interested, I'll send you that
Oh,
4-page thing.
thank you. Lloyd, Kathy, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just have a quick question that Joanne and I were actually talking about passwords and what's the safest way to save your passwords or store your passwords. And you mentioned that the ID Shield, you could do it there. But if somebody didn't have that, do you have a recommendation on what's the safest way to keep all your passwords? Because we need them for all kinds of stuff.
No, I don't have anything that's foolproof. I keep it on a sheet of paper, but people would have to know where to find the sheet of paper, and it's there's a bit of coding goes on with me as well. But no, I think that's why there are numerous organizations out there that do create passwords.
Right.
Or, yeah,
like apps
password managers.
to store. Yeah.
Password
Okay.
managers.
I just wondered if you knew of any of them being
No.
reputable or.
Actually, I don't think, to be honest, I think if you're creative in creating the password, you can keep them anywhere pretty much, because the chance of somebody breaking into your house and finding something with those passwords on it is slim, first of all. But second, the biggest problem is people are using simple stuff for passwords, names, addresses, phone numbers, words, their dog's name or their cat's name. It's stuff that I think, and that's getting worse, I think, with AI, because AI will be able to make determinations. I don't talk about it in there, but something that we've mentioned a time or two in the past is don't answer questions on social media that will give people clues as to what you use for passwords.
Yeah.
What's your mother's maiden name? And it goes on and on and on.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And I guess the other thing is, and especially because of the risk with digital work these days, this further second step authentication, where you put in your password, but then you have to wait for an email to come or a text to come with a 4 or 6 digit security number. I think the more of those that we participate in, the better it is.